Mama too hot like a furnace. Hello everyone, Ryan here, and today I'm going to be doing a review of the new Joyner Lucas album. And it's titled 508 507 2209. And I hadn't heard of Joyner Lucas before this album, but I'd seen a lot of good things about it, so I decided to check it out. He is a Massachusetts rapper. He is on Atlantic Records as well, so he's doing pretty well for himself. It's just I'd not heard of him up until this point. Despite this album being released on the same day as Young Thug, Big Boy and 2 Chainz released their albums, it hasn't really hindered him in any kind of way, because there has still been quite a bit of hype about this album. And when I saw that this album was like an hour and 23 minutes long, I was put off a little bit, because I know hip hop these days seems to go way overboard with the length of the albums. The running time is always a bit too long, it's like well over an hour, and there's never enough to keep you interested for the entire time. However, I can happily report that Joyner Lucas has kept me interested for pretty much this whole album. Some of the song topics that Joyner Lucas discusses in his tracks are quite impressive, and he has a really diverse range of things that he talks about on this album. The hooks are usually pretty good as well, and he can rap his ass off really well. He spits fire throughout this whole album. And we pretty much get that right from the start of this album, except it starts off with a voicemail from a girl who's saying to him, like, you're spending too much time at the casino, you really need to calm it down. And then instantly Joyner Lucas comes in with the "get the fuck off of my dick," which is just so funny to me. I just feel like it's the craziest way to just respond to something like that. But also, I think as well, on this album there are a few points where voicemails come through, which is obviously tying into the album title, obviously being his phone number, and of course he's getting these voicemails, and each time the voicemails are kind of like telling him that he's doing something not quite right, and something, you need to sort yourself out. But Joyner Lucas is kind of doing his own thing across this album. He's concentrating on other things. He's clearly got other things that are important that are going on in his life. It isn't necessarily a theme that goes on throughout the whole of the album that ties anything together, but it is just a little thing that keeps cropping up once in a while. But the opening track, Ultrasound, really got me hooked on this album, because that track is fantastic. It's one of the best here. The beat is great, produced by Decap, and yeah, this is really well done. He fits on this style really well, and he sounds excellent on this song. The second track, Lovely, is also great, but it does bring up a problem quite early on this album that I notice that I can't kind of shake off just like quite as easily, because this song goes on a bit too long. Like the issue on this album are a few tracks that just go on too long. The runtime of the album isn't too bad, even though it is over an hour long, but it's just the songs themselves. Like there are some 6-minute tracks here, and it's like it just could have been tied up a lot quicker. There were multiple times where I would be thinking that the song is near the end of the song, but then I would have to look at the runtime of the track, and it would only be 3 minutes into the song, and there was still another 3 minutes to go. And that certainly is an issue on the track Lovely, and also the following track, FYM. But it is a good thing that Joyner Lucas does manage to keep you interested for quite a long time, because he is such a good rapper and has interesting topics to discuss. Like, for example, on the track Just Like You, which is a really good song. It's like an ode to his parents kind of song, where he raps about all the problems that his parents have. Them being addicted to drugs and not being particularly good parents. But he talks on the chorus how he never really wants to be anything like them. But I do like this kind of attitude on this song, because a lot of people will always go through their lives saying, oh, I don't want to be anything like my parents, but then Joyner Lucas also kind of acknowledges the fact that, well, one day he probably will end up being like them. It's a very conscious standpoint to be coming from, and Joyner Lucas has really good technical ability to make this song work really well. And then on the next track, Just Because, which is a song about how a relationship started off in that honeymoon phase. A lot of relationships have this sort of pattern, and how they would do things just because, you know, they would do everything together just because it was natural and how it was the right thing to do. But then as the relationship progresses, all of that kind of dies away, and he talks in the song how he wishes it was back to that time when they would do things just because. But he also acknowledges that he was part of the issue because he did some things wrong, and that's why the relationship kind of ended up tumbling down. He also delves into relationship topics on the track "We Gonna Be Alright," which is a really good song. He's talking here about how the relationship won't fail because he's gonna make sure he does everything right and make sure everything is okay. I do like that it's okay to just rap about these things, as not many rappers do, but it's not like in a Drake way where it's kind of like cheesy and corny. Joyner Lucas does it really well. But for me, the absolute best song on this album is the track "I'm Sorry," an absolute heartbreaking song actually, about a suicide of his close friend. Whether or not this is true, I don't know, but it really feels like it's a real thing that happened in his life. And the first verse is talking from the perspective of his friend and how he explains how everything was too tough and he didn't want to go through with the suicide, but he does anyway. But then on the second verse, it's talking from his own perspective, where he reels off all his feelings about everything and how he wished it had never happened, and also how he feels like it was selfish of his friend to go and do that and hurt everyone around him. It's an insanely well written song that is just absolutely masterful. It's a really good song. I couldn't believe how good this was when I heard it, and the lyrics to this are just unbelievable. But unfortunately, the tracks preceding this track is where the album hits a lull, because there are like 4 in a row that I just don't care for at all. "I Need More" and "Literally" have really bad hooks on this song. "I Need More, 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 more. I've been thinking with my dick." These songs really just take away from the album for me, especially considering they're just nothing, and they go on for so long. They're like 6-minute long tracks. So yeah. There are some weak moments on this album, but overall it's pretty damn good. I would definitely recommend it. Like I said, some tracks just go on too long and it ruins them, and they should have been way shorter, and if they were a lot shorter I would have loved them. And there are some tracks that go on too long and also aren't very good, but pretty much like 75% of this album I would say is worth hearing. It's pretty damn good. I would say this is a B-. Definitely check out this album, it's good. And definitely check out those songs that I said, like "I'm Sorry" and "Ultrasound." They are fantastic. If you like this review, make sure you subscribe for more reviews, and have a good day.